Mariam. Hi, Mariam. From Dar es Salaam.
I see Hannah Mwangi.
Yeah. Hannah from Nairobi. Hi, Hannah. We have Faraja from Dar es Salaam. We have Terry from Nairobi. We have Leila from Dar. So we have a mixture of Dar,
Nairobi.
or Tanzania, and Nairobi. Yeah. So I have another question for you as we go on. So as you're coming in today for this conversation, I can see we have Kimani from Eldoret. Then we have Leon, who says from a land far, 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 far away.
Kilimanjaro also. You were climbing mountains. Kilimanjaro is there.
We have Judith from Dar. Dafroza from Kilimanjaro. Yes, I was near Kilimanjaro, so I didn't climb Kilimanjaro. I don't know where far, far away is from Leon Miller.
I don't know. He's giving us a mystery.
Then we have Nerea from Pwani.
Pwani is a coastal region, but we call it Pwani in Kiswahili. It's a neighboring Dar es Salaam.
Oh, so I thought it was Pwani in Kenya. We call it Mombasa Pwani for some reason.
Yes, now we have a region which is called Pwani.
Okay, we have David from Dar, Austin from Tanzania, Sylvia from Kilimanjaro, Engineer Ilham from Dar es Salaam. So quite a few people joining us. We have Mudhoni from Nairobi. So feel very welcome today to this session where we're going to talk about workplace culture and the place of emotional intelligence when it comes to workplace culture. So I have one more, Diana and Sally from Tanzania and from Dar.
Okay, excellent.
So some of the ground rules for the session is let's stay muted. We can keep our videos on if we wish to have them on, but let's stay muted so that we can have everyone enjoy the experience of listening into us. My name is Vicky Karuga, and I think at this moment I would like to just start our conversation on emotional intelligence and culture. So you're going to see some slides come up on the screen right now. And the team can give me a thumbs up if, is it the one? Yes. Yes, so the webinar today is about revolutionizing, isn't the word, your workplace culture with emotional intelligence. And what are some of the game-changing strategies for transformation and leadership? And of course, you will have me, Vicky Karuga from Nairobi, taking you through it. And I will be co-facilitating this conversation with Zuhura Muro. And as usual, we shall try and talk about the experiences we have had as we have continued to train and run sessions on emotional intelligence for different organizations. So two companies are partner in this area of emotional intelligence. One is from Nairobi, Profiles International, and the other one is from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, Impact Leadership Academy, ILA. And both of us are very, very passionate about delivering assessments, training solutions for various organizations. And we have managed to work together to deliver and support talent development and capacity building to support various initiatives, whether that is the development of high potentials, whether that is the development or the support of a culture change or leadership, whatever that may be. And both the founders, that is Vicky Karuga and Zuhura Muro, are two people who are very passionate about emotional intelligence. And we both have been facilitating this topic for quite some time now. And we are also master trainers for other trainers in the Genos community, where we deliver trainings on emotional intelligence and based on the Genos model of emotional intelligence. So just to talk a little bit about Genos, which is the company that we represent. They are based in Australia, but of course with presence all over the world. And East Africa, they are represented by Zuhura and I. And it is a company that has won several awards in the area of EI, be it in the assessments region or in the training programs that they have also developed over time. And then we have had the privilege and the honor of working with so many companies across the region. And these are just some of the people that we have been able to support and also partner with in both Kenya and in Tanzania. But we've also worked regionally with the IFC, where we have delivered programs in the sub-Saharan Africa. So it's just to let you know that you're in good company, and we will be sharing insights from what we have learned over the years. And then, of course, we want you to go onto the chat. Please feel free to ask away as we discuss. Zuhura will be also kind of moderating the session. She'll be looking at the chat a lot to see what questions are you asking, and I'm encouraging you to ask as many as you can. And then to also ask some questions to you about some of the things that we are going to talk about today. So now, as we delve into the topic of emotional intelligence and culture, my first question would be, what has been your experience with emotional intelligence? You can give us one comment on the chat of what is emotional intelligence to you, or what do you associate emotional intelligence with? So you could even give one word if that is what you think will be sufficient. We will be fine. So let me see what's coming through on the chat. And I can see we have Leticia. She says acceptance is what she associates. I think one word that she associates emotional intelligence with. Let me see what else will come through. We have Muzoni, who says self-awareness is one of them. We have Nerea, who says being aware of my emotions. Then we have Sally Kape, who says anger control. Judith, who says ability to recognize and manage your own emotions. And then we have Batilda, who says empathy. Joseph says stability. Rian says understanding. Francis says a mental awareness. Sylvia says effective communication. And all these are words associated with emotional intelligence, self-awareness, adaptation, and resilience. And then Cindy says presence. So there are many words that we could associate with emotional intelligence. And there are also many words or behaviors or things that we see that we associate with emotional intelligence. I can see we also have a bit more here from being considerate of others' feelings and emotions, and then being able to understand your own emotions and those around you and act in a way that doesn't offend anyone, you included. So for us, the working definition of emotional intelligence is this one. And maybe I'd like to ask the team to mute so that we can all have the same experience. So for us, our working definition around emotional intelligence is that set of skills that helps us better perceive, so that is awareness, the awareness of emotion, better understand and manage emotions in both ourselves and then in others. And collectively, they help us make intelligent responses to and in the use of emotions. And even as we go ahead and continue with that definition, it goes into even using emotions to reason or reasoning with emotions, using emotions as a guiding beacon in terms of understanding perhaps what decisions you might be making. So the whole world of emotional intelligence is really fundamental to us being able to have a successful work life, and then also have successful, off work life. And the other day, I remember Zuhura shared with me a book, or it was an article on resonant leadership that had Daniel Goleman being interviewed, and he says, emotions are very powerful things because emotions actually become more powerful than our intellect. And so when we are aware of them, we are better able to make decisions when it comes to emotions. So we have a lot of literature out there on just why emotional intelligence is becoming important. But we also have information out there on the demand for people who will be high in emotional intelligence. And this is set to rise largely also due to automation and AI. And it is seen that it will be the highest across the areas of finance, and that is insurance and retail banking, where a lot of AI and a lot of change towards the way that we conduct work is seen. And then we have a lot of benefits that have been shown through research for organizations that really take the time to invest in emotional intelligence, because it offers benefits not just in terms of increased productivity and efficiency through better collaboration, better ways of connection. And when we have organizations that are emotional intelligence, as we'll see much later, there's a lot more positivity, and therefore people tend to be more engaged or more satisfied or want to go to work, basically, hence the higher employee satisfaction. And then due to all these good things, of course, you will have an increase in market share, and you will have openness to the change, because a lot of the things that we're experiencing now is just change in the way that we're doing things, change in policy, adapting different sets of laws. Our countries are changing the way that they're approaching different things and adopting new frameworks, new laws, new policies, and we are having to adapt with them. Even the things that we're delivering as products and services, they are changing so much. And I think I was watching a clip the other day where they were saying that the virtual sense of things has also meant that we are so fast with how we resolve situations that even the time in between resting becomes very little. And so people who are also investing in their own emotional growth are seen to also have better emotional and mental well-being. And when organizations invest in emotional intelligence programs, they also see this as a benefit that comes with the trainings that are there. I can see we already have a question. Zuhura, is that a question or is it a comment from Sally Kape? Have I lost Zoo? Zoo, are you on the call? I think I might have lost Zoo. So we have a comment from Sally Kape who says, sometimes the biggest challenge is defining the emotion itself. Apart from, I feel I am happy, sad, angry, exhausted. Others are hard to define or even place in the picture at that particular moment. So I think that might be a comment, and I just will pack it, and then we can look at it when we just finish the conversation that we're having right now. So why is emotional intelligence important, and why are we speaking about it today in terms of being revolutionary in the workplace in terms of culture? Culture, as we know it, is a very critical ingredient when it comes to organizational success. And that is why we invest a lot in defining our culture, defining our values, defining our mission, our vision. And leaders, or even us as individuals, we play a critical role when it comes to creating that culture and creating a culture that will support the business initiatives that we have. And so when we talk about emotional intelligence and we talk about culture, most of the time, the cultures that we know work and that we have seen from research work are cultures that foster trust, that allow for people to have conversations, difficult conversations. And those difficult conversations, they shape the positivity or the nature of culture, because a culture that is a bit stifled means that then people will not be sharing ideas freely. There will be no conflict. And we all know that when there's no conflict, it means maybe that people are not really speaking their minds. And so this is not really good for business. And in the recent past, we have seen cases where people have shared the failures that have come with cultures that feel that they cannot speak out, where there is no trust, where there is what we call no psychological safety. And for us in the genus fraternity, these conversations sit in the competency of authenticity. We have 6 competencies that we go through when we talk about the genus model of emotional intelligence. But under the competency of authenticity sits what we call genuine leadership. And genuine leadership here, we define it as being both the ability to speak freely and honestly, to honor your commitments, to be able to facilitate as well robust and challenging conversations. Because if I can speak my mind freely, then you should also be able to speak your mind freely. And that is through authenticity, where whatever I allow myself to do, then I also expect the same of you. And so when we don't have authentic conversations or authenticity in cultures, what happens is that we start building what we call distrust or mistrust among us. One of the reasons why, again, we may fail to show authenticity, and I think this may not come as a surprise to everyone, is because of our inability to show vulnerability. And vulnerability means that we might have to tap into ourselves and display emotions when we are speaking. I know most of us come from the school of thought where emotions served as points of weakness. And the culture that we want now is one that supports a place where we as human beings can bring ourselves through to the door as all of ourselves. Again, I go back to the article that Zuhura shared, where the person speaks and says, we are all emotional creatures. But the minute that I cannot read your emotion, what happens is that I cannot develop a connection with you. And so we have to start thinking about the power that emotions have for us, the power that emotions will have when we are able to vulnerably and effectively be able to display them. Because all emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's happiness, whether it's joy, whether it's sadness, they all serve to connect us with each other. And they all serve to create strong social bonds. When we experience someone who's very guarded, we can't read their face, we can't read their tonal, the tone is, dry like a robot, we even call them robots. We have a disconnection there. We're like, who is this person we're talking to? But, when we have someone who seems open and honest, we are able to feel like, we are connecting with this person. And the truth about human connection is that at that particular point, when we can sense emotion in the other person, we are open to connect. And this power comes from authenticity. So authentic emotions will create connection, they will create trust, they will create understanding. When we authentically express our emotions, of course, we create mistrust. And I'll give a case in point, like I know a long time ago when we used to be at banks, we used to go to the tellers to go and get our money from the banks. I think they had been given this order that you must smile at every customer. And there was always the person who would smile to you and you'd feel that smile was very realistic and you would, connect with them. But there's always that one who, when they smiled, they would smile from the corner of their mouth and you'd be like, this person I am trying to connect with doesn't seem to really, it's really fake. And when we sense that fakeness, we just build mistrust. We don't know what this person is about. And you can imagine now for us as stewards of culture, how when we are expressing ourselves, we might be doing disservice to the connections that we have with every single person. I think it is the connection model that says that only 7% of the actual words we speak are heard, are words. The rest of communication, someone said emotional intelligence is communication, is our body language and is the tone of voice that we use. So sometimes without knowing it, we are either creating a culture of trust with the people around us, or we are destroying that culture of trust with people around us. And so I want to put forth this quote, because the thing about emotional intelligence is that we have to express ourselves. It is important to speak and to connect to others and to tell them what we feel. But the true skill here, so that we don't kill what we call the connections that we have, is being able to connect, as Aristotle put it sometime long, long, long ago. Yeah. And he said that anybody can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not within everyone's power, and that is not easy. And now that is where the skill and the finesse of expressing how you feel in leadership comes in. And that is where that particular art of being able to speak and express yourself, especially when facilitating difficult conversations, becomes important, because you want to keep building this particular trust that you're trying to foster. And trust is not built overnight, it is built over time. So incrementally, you're having conversations with people and you are trying to ensure that in the best way possible, you are coming across as someone who's still trustworthy, but still being able to hold people accountable. So in leadership, as we create culture, we cannot not practice the very elements or the very things or the very reasons why we were made to be in charge of people. And even if you're not in charge of a person, you are a team player, you are a member of a team, you are in charge of certain things in your team. When we breed places that people cannot speak, what happens is that we reduce conflict. And sometimes we reduce conflict because we don't know how to express ourselves. So this particular webinar, what we're talking about is having the power and having the skill of being able to express yourself clearly and articulately will help you preserve the trust that is required in workplace culture that can actually change the way that teams operate, that can help them develop that trust that they require to be able to conflict around issues. So this means that by and large, every context will require certain feelings, but sometimes the actual feelings that we feel are not the ones that are expected. So for example, we may have a session where the results, the business results that came through are not great, and you have to communicate this to maybe your board or to the boss or just to your team leader. Something is not great. So you know that when you go to have this conversation with this person, your voice is going to shake because you're feeling fear, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxious about all these things. But then thinking ahead, the required outcome for this conversation is that you actually discuss the results as they are and conflict around the results as they are without necessarily making it very personal. You know that if you appear for that conversation with a shaky voice of sorts, the way we go there, you're asked one question, you can't respond because you have suddenly gone blank. Those things now change the whole conversation. It moves from being a conversation about the report to you. Now, why aren't you answering? What's your problem? Didn't you come here very better prepared? And so with our team members and with ourselves, how often do we then train or mentor people so that every single time that they are having this difficult conversation, okay, let me rephrase that, not every single time, but most of the times, they are able to understand the necessity of being able to have that gap between the feelings that they're experiencing and what the context requires. It could even be a team member who has let down the team. And the next team member, without thinking, starts telling them how the disappointment they are, the things that they have done, and the way the team is going to go down the drain, without even any filter. And yes, those things needed to be said. But then the context, already this person is spoiling and is backing down. And those small things, it is my assertion at this particular webinar, are the little things that break down the culture of trust and connection that is required for us to actually be solving things. So sometimes you need to project that calm, that confidence, even if what you're feeling is stress, even if what you're feeling is sometimes you're a little tired, even if what you're feeling is anxiety. There's so many other feelings that will be going on within yourself. But you know that when you utter a word that is maybe out of line, the work that you've been doing for the last 3 years just goes out the drain. So it's about harnessing that skill of being able to guard more often than not that ability to conflict around ideas. And this art of projecting this calm and confidence is not possible if you do not invest in your own well-being. So it comes back and starts with you. It starts with you from the point of how are you bringing yourself as a team member? How are you bringing yourself as a leader to this particular place of work? So workplace culture, in a nutshell, starts with how you're bringing yourself to work. Yeah. So if you're bringing yourself to work with the stress of last night, with the lack of sleep, with no diet, with debt because you have not been able to handle your financial matters, and you're bringing yourself to work, I don't think the chances of being able to play out as a productive team member will really be for you. And so investing in your well-being, and this is about managing yourself, is the first thing that you have to do. You have to sleep well, you have to eat well, you possibly have to reflect and have time for meditation. You possibly have to have relationships. You possibly, all these things that if you Google right now, how can I invest in my own well-being, you will find. And because that then will allow you to come to these challenging and these difficult conversations from a point of projecting calm and confidence. Now, earlier on, I talked about, are we also teaching our team members? Remember, we talked about trust. Are we also teaching our team members how to come to these conversations with the projected calm and confidence that they require? Because it's one thing to expect that team members are going to be able to show up in a certain way, but we all know that skills are learned over time. And for us as leaders, then, we are called to be those mentors who use techniques and possibly use cheat codes that allow our various people who are our colleagues to come to these conversations better prepared and better able to handle the heat. And we see this all the time in airlines. They prepare scripts for their people. And this is something you can also do. For example, when you know that you need to facilitate difficult performance conversations, do you have something, a technique or a manual or a framework, or even just a step-by-step 1, 2, 3 that someone can use and practice so that they can get better at it? Or do we leave those conversations to, you do you just go, yeah, you're the manager, so now you have to be facilitating challenging conversations. Even conversations around recruitment, conversations around just engagement, even conversations around checking whether the team has understood what we're talking about. So developing little frameworks, developing maybe even little ways and scripts in your teams to address difficult and challenging conversations. You help the people around you come to these conversations a lot better and in ways that will promote the kind of collaborative culture that you want to see. And you find this being done everywhere. So why don't we just borrow a leaf from it as well? You find people in the professional world, they practice a lot of visualization, a lot of self-talk. The coaches talk to their people, they tell them, we got this, we are doing this. Yeah, you project that calm and confidence because you know that is what is required. You project that positivity as a leader, because you know that is what is required. You don't have the luxury of moping around and giving negative energy, because that does not promote the end game that you want to see. So in a nutshell, when we are talking about expressing our emotions, let's stop avoiding difficult conversations. Let's not be, let's lean into the conflict that is there. Let's just understand how well we should do it. And there's a lot of literature out there that talks about how to have difficult conversation. Let's not be passive aggressive. I know we have been accused many times. Maybe, I don't know whether it's just Kenyans, but I know Kenyans, we have been accused of being passive aggressive, having an indirect approach, where we just put our hands in the pocket and we say, yeah, do what you will. I'm not saying yes, neither am I saying no. And then let's also not be aggressive, be focused on our need at the expense of another person's emotion. So being more thoughtful, don't just do it. So being intentional about informing, mentoring, teaching people how to express themselves, and not thinking that people are born with the art of communication is one way that we can actually change the workplace, and we can change that workplace culture and support the kind of culture that we want. Now, what happens when we are, as I said, trying to choose our words? We are not eliminating conflict. So what I'm saying here, I'm not saying that when someone starts quarreling us, we should run away. No. Here, what we're doing is we are promoting productive intellectual conflict and removing the things that force us to go into social conflict, because that is the kind of conflict that becomes that supports movement forward. So as I've been speaking along, all I've been saying is, let us first be self-aware of our moods and our emotions. We talked about emotional intelligence as being aware of your moods and emotions, understanding our trigger points. Let us be aware of other people, their moods and emotions. And in that way, let us try and connect vulnerably, but let us not do it without thinking through what the impact of our actions, our words will be when we speak to other people. So when we demonstrate emotional intelligence by being aware of others, being aware of ourselves, being aware of the impact of our actions, what they have, being aware that my aggressive personality means that someone else might not speak. What we are in effect doing is creating what we call psychological safety. So when I know that I can speak up because I have taken the time to recognize what my words mean, I have taken the time to recognize what even my facial expressions mean, and I have taken the time to recognize that it will have an impact. The way that I show up will have an impact on someone else's ability to show up back to me. Then I am creating a space of psychological safety, and I'm walking the talk and also talking the talk. And psychological safety is what we experience when we are confident that those around us will demonstrate emotionally intelligent behavior. When I know that I have made a mistake, but the way that you hold me accountable to that mistake, because you will hold me accountable, will not attack my person, will be delivered effectively, will be delivered with finesse. And when we can start having that kind of environment in our teams, because that's the smallest component of any organization, then you can start seeing people are starting to conflict, people are starting to share ideas. You'll even feel that there's a lot of heated nature sometimes, sometimes it looks like people want to fight, but it's not that they want to fight, it's that they have felt that now that social price they have to pay for being wrong has been reduced. And you get that workplace culture right now that will thrive with change, because things are changing all the time. You get that workplace culture that will bounce back, is resilient. It will bounce back from the mistakes of business. And you also get that workplace culture where people feel like they are safe and they can also come to the table. So what we have done in short is say that the power of expressing how we feel is important in our workplace cultures. And in fact, it is a very small thing that we can learn. But this small thing, if we practice over and over again, can cause what we call an emotional contagion, where people feel valued just by the way that we express them. So in a nutshell, as I now invite Zuhura to comment and to also moderate on any questions we might have. What I have talked about is emotions, how emotions can connect us to each other, how they can create social bonds, how also, if we are ineffective in how we express ourselves, we can disconnect with each other, yeah, and we can break bonds. So we must then be able to express how we feel, yeah, as a key component of building vulnerability and building vulnerability-based trust. A lack of trust in teams, of course, leads to a fear of conflict. And if you're in a team where when you say something, everyone agrees, then you don't need the rest of the people because you are the only person making the decision. And if you're the only person making the decision, then what it means is that the others have very bright ideas that you will never hear. And so you'll never take advantage of. And we all know that in diversity of opinion and in diversity of thought is where the pursuit for truth actually lies. So fear for conflict leads to artificial harmony, which is not in your best interest when you're trying to create teams that actually work. So I want to hand it over to Zuhura at this stage. Zuhura,
Okay.
I know there have
Thank
been
you,
some
Vicky.
comments in the chat.
Yes,
And
there has been some comments, and the comments are very interesting. The team members also in the back office have picked some comments. And I think, Vicky, you have handled quite an array of concepts in emotional intelligence, starting from what it is all about. And then you went into authenticity, something which even when we did survey on emotional intelligence, it came out as something that is quite an interesting thing in East Africa. And also you handled the issue of trust and how trust can promote a culture of inclusivity and engagement, which is quite a big thing. You also talk about how human beings, we may be required to demonstrate certain feelings, but that is not what is going on inside us, and how we are going to handle it to meet the requirements of the people that we are impacting. And you went into something which is very interesting, and it is being talked about not only within our organization East Africa, but it's been talked about even at the Economic World Forum. And it is a big subject across the world, especially after the COVID-19, of psychological safety, and also the issue of promoting the culture of trust within organization. And when you are talking about it, there are some questions that have been asked, and those questions are very interesting questions that we can delve on. But before we go back to that, you also emphasized about permitting people, to do what you do as a leader. So if you're expressing yourself, also people are supposed to be permitted, to be given the permission and the respect to express what they feel. And when you were finalizing, it is very interesting when you talked about when you have vulnerability trust, where people feel they are safe to speak, they are able to express themselves. Then you create an environment which allow intellectual conflict, intellectual friction, which is very important in an organization where ideas can thrive and a new innovation can come out. And when you are talking about it, then I just look at East Africa, and you mentioned Kenya, but Kenya and Tanzania, we have almost the same culture where you have high power index, and high power index is like the person who is on top or is a leader knows it all, and then it is telltale and taken from the people they are leading is not the culture that you expect. So you find meetings becoming monologue, and you wonder if you are having a meeting and then you're asking people to weigh in with their opinion, but nobody weighs in with opinion. And when you say, do you have any question? And people are not saying anything, then you realize, oh my God, this place does not have any psychological safety. People are not able to put their heads up. So these are the conversations. But coming back to the questions, there was a question which was asked about how do I identify that I have emotional intelligence? Yeah. And also the question about how do I know that I have emotional intelligence? And then there was an issue about emotions. How do I identify them? How do I know that this is what I've been experiencing? And these are really quite interesting questions. I want to ask you, Vicky, if you can give us a bit of perspective. How do you know your level of emotional intelligence? How do you know that you're having adequate level of emotional intelligence?
Because of my assessment-based background and yours, Zuhura, of course, I will tell you, you need to take an assessment. And it would really help if this assessment that you took is not one where you're the only one rating yourself. You also need to have other people rate you. In fact, how you know how you're showing up to people, because I think emotional intelligence is a concept, but it manifests itself in the behavior that we see in others. So looking at the feedback you're getting from others on your behavior, is how you start to know that, okay, maybe here I need to look for some alignment, or I need to look for a mentor. But reading a lot of literature also on emotional intelligence helps you to really start understanding what it is from that concept. I know every time we talk about emotional intelligence, there's what people understand and there's what actually is. So I could also encourage people to do that. But you find that it is very difficult for you sometimes. It's one of the most difficult things for you to ask for feedback from others about how you're showing up in your behavior. So there is the conundrum.
Now, and also feedback seeking and feedback giving thrives better in an environment which has psychological safety, where you feel like I can seek feedback. Because also we have had situations where people seek feedback, but use that feedback to punish. Yeah, I give you feedback, but then you turn it to punish. You talked about trust. Now, I want you to really go back to the issue of trust, because the way we understand it, the emotional intelligence, trust is something which does not have a halfway. You cannot be half pregnant. And when it comes to trust, it is the same. Either there is trust or there is no trust. Now, when you were talking about culture in an organization, you said trust help to connect, and it helps people to really feel that they're part of. But also we know we have the junk theory of superiority complex, whereas you find the C-suite executive feeling like it is unprofessional to connect with the shop floor. How do we, change mindset here?
That is a very difficult question. The issue of trust, and I think a lot of the times when we speak about trust, we speak about reliable trust. We speak about predictive trust. We speak about the kind of trust that, that when you go to the traffic lights and they turn red, you know that you will stop. Yeah. And when they turn green, you'll move. But human beings are not like that. Human beings are not predictable. Human beings will let you down so many times that sometimes you will wish you were not working with them. And so trust here for me is a process, and is both an internal process and an external process. And the trust that we talk about is the one that I think is coined by the Patrick Lencioni book, which is vulnerability-based trust. And that one is, yes, it is difficult because it accepts that human beings are not perfect, including yourself. Yeah, that you're not perfect. So it starts by, it's a process. It starts by recognizing others. That is the awareness of others, how they're bringing themselves to the table. Then it goes into acceptance. Yeah, you have to accept before you can now fully trust this, because predictive trust means that for you, Zuhura, I will want to change you. I will want you to be appearing every day in this particular way, and that is the only way I can trust you. That is not sustainable. But once I accept you, then our relationship is such that I am looking at the strengths that you bring to the table. I'm looking at the strengths that I bring to the table, and that is what we're looking at in making that connection that allows us then to do the magic that we want to do. But expecting you every day to come and show up in a particular way, because that's the way that my mind has decided you need to show up, is, the same way, the way they keep saying is stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that is the same for people. So emotional intelligence is really asking us, when you're aware of yourself, you also need to invest time in being aware of others. And investing time in being aware of others is really being empathetic towards what others, who others are.
Okay, let's go to the chat, Vicky, because here Veronica is talking about, yes, Madam Zura, about those top directing instead of leading. Yeah, she got it very well, because we have leadership positions and they may be filled by people who are not leaders. And that's where you have a lot of things, because the leadership in the era we are in is very different from the industrial revolution era. We are now in the fourth industrial area. We are now in the area where information accessibility is higher. And if you're a leader that is shouting directives and other things, then you don't fit in. And from Cindy, we have a very good, interesting comment, and he's talking about the corporate dynamics and toxicity. And he's talking about how to handle emotions and accept change. As a young person, an organization is very prominent this, because I've seen how it can kill dreams and talent. Yeah, Cindy, I can connect with you. And my profile, I've been working with a number of organizations, and I've seen talents being shredded. I've gone to organizations and seen shredder machines for young talents who had a very promising opportunity to grow, but because of emotional deafness in some organization and junk theories of this superiority issues, they were killed in their cradle. So that's why you find Profiles International and Impact Leadership Academy really working on this particular product, spreading to the top leadership about the power of emotional intelligence and how you can connect people. And you said, Cindy, very well, this subject requires some more time. And you went on to say, how do you assess psychological safety in an organization? First, you will see no new ideas coming. Secondly, you'll see people doing censorship. Whatever they want to say, something they censor and they look around. Are there people who are going to really judge me? I've been to organization when a board meeting is happening, no one crosses that particular corridor, because when you are seeing somebody is looking to cut you down. And I've seen organization where things are hush-hush. When an executive passes by and people are talking, then everything goes quiet. And another thing that will show you that the psychological safety is very low in an organization, it is exactly what Vicky has expressed. Anyone can weigh on this particular topic. People say nothing. Any question? Nothing. Do you have maybe a need for clarification? Completely, nobody says anything. And then you realize, something is not very good. But also in the meeting, you find some people trying to speak and then they're told, we understand what you're going to say, sit down. So you find so many cues that will show you that the organization does not have psychological safety. Then I have Alice. This is great. Sorry, I came in late. Could you kindly send a recording. I think, Vicky, we are recording, and people who
Yes, yeah.
registered with their email, they will get that.
We
In a
definitely
situation
will.
of a manager and a person under his care, how do you handle a situation when you are a person under his care, want to advise something to the manager that you are sure he's doing wrong without hurting his ego? Now, this is coming to the ego self, which is also part of what we talk about. Yeah, there are some situations where you have toxicity in the managers, especially managers who we say imposter syndrome managers. Imposter syndrome managers, there are those managers who occupy in leadership position, but really they don't fit in, and they have inferiority complex, which they hide behind becoming very macho and quite controlling. Now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, and she has put it quite a lot, fix yourself first, yeah, because you cannot manage somebody's emotion without managing yourself. Now, this manager, how do this person approach this manager and have a conversation? I think Vicky can say something quickly about it, and then we open to other questions. But there was a question about how do I assess my emotions? Somebody had asked, how do I identify my emotion and know what I'm feeling and act intentionally? So Vicky, talk about approaching this manager and talk about how do I identify the emotions that I have. And lastly, I'll handle Hassan Mzigani about hiding emotions. Yeah.
So I can't actually talk about the question about the manager before I talk about understanding your emotions. When Zuhura and I went through this particular Genos International Emotional Intelligence course, the first thing we realized is how little we knew about our own emotions. And there's a very little exercise we do where we didn't do it today, but we run it in many of our other forums where we ask you to think through the last 24 hours, how many emotions have you experienced? It seems like a very, simple exercise, but then you discover you can remember only one or two. I could even ask you right now, what are you feeling right now? What emotions are you feeling? And just that daily introspection and making it a habit of really finding out how are you feeling starts to get you to understand the emotions, how you process them, what they mean to you, and even how you react to them. When I'm angry, I don't react the same way as Zuhura would. Maybe I have an outburst, but someone else when they're angry, they go to their corner there and they sulk for days. So it is different for each and every different person and that is why we say it is as different almost as your fingerprint. So that daily introspection, what are the emotions that I'm feeling? Starting to identify them day by day. That's how you start to name emotions. There's no shortcut, actually. It's a marathon. And the more you do it, the better you are at it. And then you start to understand some of the reactions you have, for example, to calling out a boss who you want to give them advice, but you're scared of their ego. And you name the feeling and you say, I'm scared, I feel afraid. And so if I feel afraid, why am I afraid? And you can now understand why you're afraid. Maybe he's going to shout at you. Maybe he's going to yell at you, who knows? But you can now start to understand for yourself why you are afraid. If you can tackle why you are afraid, you will find a way to approach this person and give them advice. Now, the art of giving advice to managers is a skill you can learn, but it is best taught by people who know how to do it. So I would say that for me, it is ask someone who is a bit older than you to guide you and to help you. Of course, introspect yourself, find out which emotions you're going to feel. When you're giving this advice, is your voice going to shake so that it is dismissed as not important? How do you project your confidence? Those are some of the things that you need to have. How do you make sure you deliver it in a way that it is focused on the advice and the manager sees it as that and not as an attack on his ego? So all these things, unfortunately, are things you have to learn. And we take a lot of time learning how to calculate the best interest rate that we have and barely take time to understand how to actually deliver effective conversations with the people around us. And that's where we go wrong, because it takes just as much
Vicky,
time.
we are coming to the top of the hour.
Yes, we are.
And
I can notice, yes.
yeah, the conversation could continue, but what we want to really talk about, especially what Hassan has put here, a situation where you have to conceal your emotions. And I want to finalize by saying, normally there is a Senegalese saying, which they say a chameleon changes its color to match the environment. It is never the environment which changes the color to match the chameleon. In the emotional intelligence, normally reading the context, reading the environment in which you are. And this is also part of the article which I shared with Vicky, Resonant Leadership, where there is a much more importance which is put on reading the context, because in emotional intelligence, sometimes silence speaks louder than parole. Is that situation asking you to peel off your emotions and reveal them the way they are? Is it the right environment? And when we come to authenticity, the reading of the situation and the choice of words and how to address especially sensitive issues is part of emotional intelligence. So that reading, that understanding, and when you are operating in an environment, you can even see an environment which is packed with toxicity, that you postpone things until the situation is much better. So we have what we call an internal emotional climate, reading your own emotions, and an external emotional climate. Combining these, then gives you ability to know, how am I going to handle this particular situation? Because at the end of the day, you want a positive results out of it. And that is what we call emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is managing your own emotions and managing other people's emotion with an intent to come out with the positive results of your interaction. So the reading of the context, understanding what people are saying will help us. So I think we have come to the top of the hour. I thank everyone for attending this webinar. It is just a nugget on emotional intelligence. It is a sea of knowledge that you can find in emotional intelligence, and it is application. The application of emotional intelligence across sectors has a lot of benefits, as we have demonstrated to you. Profile International and Impact Leadership Academy, we are going to run series of webinars, 3 webinars. We shall be marketing them. We shall be letting you know when we have webinars talking about a lot of things. Also, you can give us feedback about the subjects that you want us to handle so that we can prepare customized webinar to our audiences in East Africa and beyond. Vicky, your last word?
Yes, my last word is yes, I am very much looking forward to having these 1 hour sessions. We will promise not to make them longer than 1 hour, of topics that are of interest to you, that we can speak about, possibly give you a tool or two that you can take away and utilize at your workplace and even in life. And it is my great pleasure to host you together with Zuhura, and I thank you very much for making the time to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good evening. Take care and God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.